Alright, YouTube, we're back at it again. I wanted to explain something I've already done just real fast. So, I have an LY6 motor. It's a 6.0 out of a truck, and you might run into this problem with like other 5.3 motors or things in that nature that came out of a truck maybe that didn't have the alternator located down low. So, you can have like kind of two options. You can spend $200+ order a bracket from ICT Billet that kind of changes this up, and which is your tensioner, and puts the alternator over here. Or if you want to keep this spot, you're probably going to have to drill this hole. So it's not complicated, definitely easy if you can get straight in on it. Maybe have the power steering pump out of the way. I've already done it. I did it on an engine stand. Whenever the motor's on the engine stand, I have the alternator off for other reasons at the moment. So I figured I'd just go ahead and kind of explain it. So the alternator's over here, and it's going to go in exactly how it's sitting right now, actually. So it's that orientation right here. So what I did is I took that bottom bolt and I bolted it in here, and then I kind of lined it up where it looked good and made sure the alternator wasn't crashing anything. I had this on at the time while I was mocking it just to make sure I didn't have it too far over or anything like that, which it has nothing but clearance, so you should be fine. So now I went ahead and marked the hole, and then I took an 1/8 inch bit and I did a pilot hole. So I took a micrometer, which if you don't have one, you can get a cheap one. This is a cheap one. I have a couple, but this is a cheap one. I think it's just a Walmart cheapo depot. So the nice thing about it is you can turn it on and you can mic out, get an exact measurement on this. You get an exact measurement on your bolt. I think overall I had just under inch and 9/16. It was like 1.54, which I think inch and 9/16 is 1.5625. So, and then you can always take the other end of your micrometer, which is another handy dandy step. But one other thing, real quick, before I move on to that, I want you to see on these factory bolts, there's a dead space right there where you don't have to thread it all the way, but you got to make sure your hole is at least that deep. So a good practice would be slide the bolt through. Oh, that's on there. Slide the bolt through, and then figure out how much threads are hanging off, plus your nub, because that's how deep you're going to want to drill. I'd even maybe go a hair further just in case bolt stretches or anything like that. And if you don't like the idea of drilling your block a little further, then maybe put a washer on the front just to make sure it's not loose. Your alternator's not loose. But you can take this here, and when you open it, if you look at the other end, it's magic. So what you can do, I'm going to try to video this by holding it with my legs, but you can push that in all the way and then come and bottom it out, which, yeah, we got inch and 9/16. So, which, double check your stuff, make sure your bolt's not too long or too short. Don't just go off of what I said for the measurement wise. Measure for yourself. It's always safer that way. But that's kind of what I did. So I used an 1/8 inch bit, I pilot holed it, and then I used a 5/16 bit and drilled it out to my stopping point. Made sure, kept double checking it with my micrometer, making sure I'm not going in too deep. Just go slow, move a little bit. Maybe another good step, like what I did, is I took my drill bit and I marked it with a Sharpie at 1.5 inches. So when I got to 1.5 inches, I knew to stop and go real slow, like even slower than I was already. I was also trying to make sure I was staying nice and straight. And I kept my bracket on for most of the drilling just because that extra top hole, I just got a long bit, but having it bolted down here and then using that to help keep my bit straight. You know, it was my thought process. I don't know if you saw what I did with my hands there. I was watching my own self instead, but I used this part of the bracket to hold the bit straight. So anyways, from there, used a M10 1.5 tap, and just go slow. Use some cutting oil if you got some. If not, use some motor oil or something, and just go in and put threads in it, and then all said and done, it's, you know, maybe take the bolt and run it through a couple times, in and out, just to make sure that everything works out the way you want it to. And so, and all of a sudden you have that bolt hole. So you might run into these problems if you're using a G8 serpentine belt setup or an LS1 serpentine belt setup on a 5.3 or, you know, truck motor of some sort, a vehicle that doesn't have the hole. So I don't know exactly which ones do and don't, but I can tell you that the LY6, the one I have sitting right in front of me, did not. So I had to drill that hole. So, and I have to get that bolt. But anyways, long story short, I'm going to put my alternator back on. I don't think you guys need a video on that. It's just putting it in the hole and putting 2 bolts in. It's not very difficult. So, till next time. Well, later today, we're hoping we got the Speed Engineering headers, and I had to weld the flange on them at work. So, we will get that welded by the end of the day, and if I have time, we will do a video on installing those, and maybe magically the alternator will be on before we video that. So, all right, peace, guys.